By the end of the 1970s, the Algerian regime had spent nearly 2 decades suppressing the Berber identity, banning its language, censoring its music, and silencing its thinkers. What it couldn't erase, however, was the growing awareness among a new generation. A generation raised in silence, but ready to speak. In 1980, a single banned lecture at a university in Kabyle sparked something far greater. A student-led uprising that would shake the foundations of the post-colonial state. Known as the Berber Spring, this was not just a cultural revolt. It was a declaration that Algeria's identity could not be reduced to a single language or a single culture. Alongside the construction of a centralized nation-state, the Algerian government created an exclusive, homogenizing culture that demanded conformity. This state-backed culture is greatly influenced by Pan-Arabism, an ideology which asserts that the Maghreb is Arab and nothing else, that the Berber language is a pure creation of colonialism and imperialism to divide the Arab nation and the North African working class. After years of provocations, arrests, and torture targeting Berber activists, demands for linguistic and cultural recognition finally exploded into the open. The general strike across Kabyle on April 16, 1980, marked a turning point. From the beginning of the Boumediene regime, the government's primary goal was to stifle any Kabyle aspirations for linguistic rights or democratic freedoms. It was from this time that systematic practices against the use of Kabyle began in schools, administration, road checks, and courts, where even the use of interpreters was refused. Starting in 1970, live sports broadcasts that were once aired in Kabyle on Radio Algiers were replaced by Arabic commentary. A few years later, Berber names predating Islam were prohibited. As the regime attempts to suppress the Berber language in Algeria, the Berber movement is gaining strength among the substantial Kabyle immigrant community in France, much like the Algerian national movement did 50 years earlier. In almost the entire national movement, starting, let's say, with a North African star, which was the idea of Amar before it became associated with Mesali Hajj, nearly all the political movements originated in the immigrant community.
Sociétaux et beaucoup de mouvements politiques sont partis de l'immigration.
The Berber Academy of Paris, created in 1967 by Vassoud Mohanda Arav, former officer of the ILN and the FFS, recruits mainly from immigrant worker circles. This academy is the main center for the development of the Berber movement in France and Algeria. The activities of the academy sparked a deep cultural awakening among Kabyle youth. In Algeria, young people very discreetly obtain everything that the academy publishes. Others registered by the hundreds for the Berber language class given by Mouloud Maamrian at the University of Algiers. This academic wing carried out research on language, history, poetry, theater, translations of literary works, publications of lexicons, newsletters, comic strips, and so on. In 1973, the government abolished the Berber chair led by Mouloud Maamrian at the University of Algiers. Because of the suppression of the teaching of Berber in academia, Berber linguistic and cultural demands migrate from the university to the streets. As a result, many cafes, hotels, restaurants, and even some public offices in Algiers began using only Berber and French. Berber demands also expressed themselves through 2 domains that escaped government control: music and sport. From the 1970s, the explosion of new Kabyle music played an essential role in the awakening of Berber consciousness. The popular fervor surrounding singers like Farhat Mehni مع تبلونس
شنو غي فنانان ذي ربعة يسند مدني حب الخاطر
ايتم انجلت يدير أبرانيس جمل أعلام and the mass demonstrations in the stadiums when the GSK football team plays testify to an increased desire for the Kabyles to have their identity recognized. During the final of the Algerian Cup, on June 19, 1977 in Algiers, which saw GSK achieve the double, that is the championship and the Algerian Cup, spectators brandished banners written in Berber, attacking Boumediene and chanting slogans such as, "The Berber language will live," "Down with the dictatorship," and "Long live democracy." They also sang songs of the Kabyle resistance fighters from the national liberation struggle. President Boumediene, who had been in power in Algeria since 1965, experienced a deterioration of health in the late 1970s, which ultimately led to his death in 1978.
Les quelques 30 médecins qui soignent le président Boumediene ont localisé un caillot au cerveau. Ce caillot serait la cause du coma dans lequel il est plongé depuis 8 jours.
During Boumediene's decline, which lasted from November to December 1978, the struggle for succession was fierce among the high-ranking officials of the regime. The hope of cultural and political liberalization sparked by the agony and death of Boumediene is called into question. The army, which secured the seizure of power by Ben Bella in 1962, and which overthrew him in 1965, ensured the succession by Colonel Chadilian Ben Jeddid. In Algerian academia, hostilities are reaching their boiling point. Repeated refusals to allow Berber instruction at the universities of Algiers and Tizi Ouzou threw both institutions into turmoil. The University of Tizi Ouzou, in constant agitation since its creation in 1977, has already experienced 3 major strikes before the events of 1980. At the time, any effort to bring cultural life to the university was banned. The Kabyle singer Eitem Inglet was banned from performing at the university in 1978. The university theater group was prohibited from presenting Kateb Yassin's play, The 2000-Year War, on 2 occasions. Finally, the writer Mouloud Maamrian saw his conference on ancient Kabyle poetry, scheduled for March 10, 1980, banned just 1 day before it was due to take place. The day after this cancellation, the students decided to march in the streets of the city and particularly in front of the governmental buildings, such as the prefecture and the party headquarters. Protesters chanted slogans like "No to cultural repression" and "Yes to Algerian popular cultures." In Kabyle they shouted "Nayan dil Vatal," "We've had enough of injustice," and "Thamazigh Tsamsleithna," "Berber is our language." 2 days later, the events took a political turn. The students decided to strike, and graffiti demanding democracy appeared on walls and road signs on the Algiers-Tizi Ouzou highway. In 1980, it was a cultural demand, centered first on identity and language, but also on democracy. It was the first time since the FFS episode that the question of democracy was being raised again.
Après, évidemment, le FFS, que se reposait le problème de la démocratie.
From March 16th, the agitation began to reach middle schools and high schools in towns and villages throughout Kabyle. With the support of the local population, students targeted symbols of the central government, party offices, sub-prefectures, tourist hotels, and even gendarmerie and police stations. Algiers will in turn be won over by student unrest. Around the slogans Berber language, popular culture, and freedom of expression, a major peaceful demonstration took place on April 7th in Algiers. There will be more than 100 police arrests. Faced with the expansion and scale of the popular movement, never before seen in independent Algeria, and faced with the inability to politically resolve the crisis, the government launches a wave of repression. The police reacted with great brutality. The newspaper Le Monde writes, "After cutting off the procession, the police isolated around 100 young people that they forcefully threw, using batons, into the vans." Aware of the popular character and the deep meaning of the demonstrations, the government responded with a series of accusations widely disseminated by the media, which denounced the demonstrators as enemies of the revolution, manipulated by reactionary forces linked to neo-imperialist interests, and colonialists who are trying to undermine national unity, the Arabness of the Algerian people, their attachment to the ideals of Islam, and their commitment to building a socialist society. On April 16th, Kabyle was on a general and total strike. This event marks a pivotal moment, signaling a definitive rupture between the Kabyle population and the Algerian regime, as it unified voices of dissent against decades of repression. The state is convinced that Kabyle has once again become the home of a vast popular movement which threatens to become widespread if it does not intervene quickly. The government launched the harshest wave of repression Algeria had experienced since independence. On April 20th at 4 a.m., the university and hospital of Tizi Ouzou were violently evacuated by the secret services and the army. Violent clashes took place for 4 days, making Tizi Ouzou a city in full insurrection. Hundreds were injured, many seriously, and numerous arrests were made. Faced with an increasing number of repressive units, the Tizi Ouzou insurgents were quickly overwhelmed. For 4 days, they had been supported by the population of neighboring towns and villages, who stood firmly behind their cultural and democratic demands. But without help from outside Kabyle, they had no chance of holding out any longer. Their only hope was that the rest of Algeria would rise up. But the Arabic-speaking populations, deceived by state propaganda, did not seem to understand the nature of the insurrection.
C'est que en 80, c'était
In 1980, it was a regional demand. The other regions didn't see themselves as concerned. They were waiting to see if we would succeed, and if we did, they would benefit. But they never joined.
ou alors elles attendaient si on arrivait à la victoire, ben elles en profiteraient. Mais elles n'ont pas rejoint.
The city of Tizi Ouzou was once again paralyzed by a general strike on May 19th. On May 24th, commandos armed with iron bars and bicycle chains attacked protesters at the Faculty of Science and Technology at the University of Babzouar, where the strike, as a form of solidarity with those arrested, is widely followed. According to Le Monde, the opponents of the strike, however, seemed the most inclined to resort to violence, leaving around 30 people injured. Having not really been able to extend outside Kabyle, the Berber Spring will not immediately obtain the satisfaction of its demands. From that point on, the fight will be centered on the release of the political prisoners. Although the Berber Spring did not bring immediate success, it helped break the silence and reduce the climate of fear and self-censorship, and it opened the path of struggle to other groups, notably young people and women. The latter took to the streets to demonstrate against the preparation and discussion in the National People's Assembly of a proposed legislation on personal status, relegating women to the status of minors. Furthermore, on a cultural level, young people have taken numerous initiatives in favor of the Berber language. Free Berber courses are organized in the universities of Tizi Ouzou, Algiers, and Boumerdès. Conferences are given, texts and periodicals are distributed, galas are organized. The success of all these initiatives, and more particularly that of the gathering of April 20th, 1981, which saw more than 50,000 people commemorate the first anniversary of the Berber Spring, demonstrated the liveliness of the movement and its deep support among the public. A new step in the history of the Berbers, and of Algeria as a whole, is now underway. The Berber Spring of 1980 was a response to the regime's imposed narrative of a single cultural divide between Arabo-Islamic and French culture. The Berber Spring reveals a deeper cultural and political divide that stands between the Berber population and the Arabo-Islamic regime. It exposed the deep contradictions at the heart of both the national movement and the Algerian state. It appears as a new simultaneously cultural and political struggle. Thus, the Tizi Ouzou movement revives the debate of the years 1948-1949. Algerian Algeria, or Arabo-Muslim Algeria,